I have played the MSQ for patch 7.4, and Square Enix, genuinely, whoever you have in that writer's room, keep them. The jump in quality is so noticeable, especially in a patch like this that is largely set up. Guys, we have so much to talk about. Hello, everybody, it's your boy Jmulls, and oh my god, there's lava fells everywhere! So we're going to break this video up into two different parts. This first half is going to be non-spoilers, and in the second half, we're going to have to talk about spoilers because, oh my god. So let's begin with non-spoilers. Overall, patch was fine. I think in a lot of ways it feels like I don't want to call it a filler patch, it's a setup patch, which to be fair, they did talk about before that this is how the story is going to feel like. It's going to be rather slow, it's going to be a lot of setup for patch 7.5, and it definitely does feel that way. There's not a lot of great grandiose story events. It basically starts with a little bit of an epilogue for Dawntrail proper, basically just closing the book on it, and then it proceeds into a story that's going to tie us into this next new narrative arc. If you have watched the trailer for the patch, we go to that new city location. Again, I'll leave spoilers for the second half. We have the dungeon, we fight Doomtrain. Doomtrain is awesome, by the way. Oh my god, that's one of the biggest. You wouldn't expect this fight to be the visual spectacle that it is, but it's just rule of cool from start to finish. The fight itself, at least on normal mode, isn't that hard at all. Same with the dungeon. On normal, well, I guess it's just a Final Fantasy XIV dungeon, but it does feel like a step down in difficulty compared to 7.3. But I would still say that it's pretty fun, particularly the fight. And I think what really helps carry this patch is a couple of core writing fundamentals where it really does feel like a return to form for Final Fantasy XIV. That is dialogue, VO, and also cinematography. And while there's not a lot of great big plot moving events that happen in this patch, the stuff that does happen, it's well executed on. The characters are likable, the VO is enjoyable to listen to. The beginning of this patch made me weirdly nostalgic for Dawntrail, and I don't know how it actually managed to do that, but it like genuinely did. I'm like, I just had a kind of a soft smile on my face the entire time, reminiscing about Dawntrail overall, and it's freaking Dawntrail! I didn't think I'd feel like that, but I think it goes to show that, for me, it felt like this ever since 7.2, and their way of just telling a story has gotten better with each patch. I think overall, I still prefer patch 7.3, because 7.3 was a lot of, well, payoff for the events of Dawntrail up to that point, in particular 7.2, whereas 7.4 is a lot of build-up and setup. But their way of conveying emotion, their way of conveying dialogue, is just overall better here. There's quite a few moments that feel a bit slow, where it's like, this feels like a bit of busy work, but it's nothing that Final Fantasy XIV is necessarily a stranger to. Even in like the golden days of Final Fantasy XIV's story, there were sections that felt kind of slow, that was focused more so on developing characters or a new little region you go to. That's what 7.4 really feels like, but it does it well overall. And it got me to continue to care because the characters we met were likable, and the story elements that were being tackled overall were interesting enough for me. So even when we were doing these kind of slow meandering activities, you had this wire mesh running through it all, where it's like, I'm interested in these elements and to see how this is developed and fleshed out. And I think 7.4 did a good enough job of doing that. Also, oh my god, the visuals, and I don't know if I want to call it a spectacle, but oh my god, the visual presentation in this patch is really nice. The locations you go to just are so well put together visually. And while yeah, the dungeon has a couple forgettable boss fights, and it is just a Final Fantasy XIV dungeon where it's just corridor simulator. Yeah, I get that. The visual progression, though, from the beginning of the dungeon to the end of the dungeon was really nice to see. There was a story being told throughout that entire dungeon, and I welcome that pace. Like, the new city that we go to in this patch is very nice. Also, by the way, we actually do go to a whole new location for 7.4. It's not the biggest zone of all time, largely just being composed of a couple of hallways, but it is a new location that we go to. I personally welcome that. However, you can't fly there. So when the quests have you go from like the top of the zone to the bottom of the zone, it's not that big, right? But in the moment, it's just a little bit like, oh my god, I wish I could fly here. But there's another element to the storytelling in this patch that I was quite a fan of, and that is their use of an in-game scenario. Remember in 7.1 when we had to deal with Kona and the freaking, like, cow thing? Okay, so imagine a scenario like that, but make it actually good this time. You take control of another character, and yeah, the gameplay is still really simple there, but there's a few cool references to the cinematic of Dawn Shell, surprisingly so, and it doesn't go on for too long to where it becomes overly repetitious and boring, and I think it was just long enough to where it was fun and interesting, and then it puts you in control of your own character again for the actual big fight in this solo instance. And another element to that fight that I was quite receptive to, you actually feel the presence of your party members, specifically one. I'm trying to avoid spoilers here, I just think overall that instance was well done. It was pretty fun. I always love it when Final Fantasy XIV tries to tell its story in things that aren't just a bunch of cutscenes back to back, and I still think they have a long way to go in this regard. However, it was a good instance. It was a really good trial, and the dungeon was pretty solid. So while overall, don't expect like any big, massive, shocking plot moment where you go, oh my god, what's going on? You're not gonna get anything like that here. It's a very slow patch, character focus, we're building up this new city, developing the characters there. They said it in the live letter, this is Kryle's patch basically. It really does feel like that. I think it's well executed, it's good all around, great cinematography, especially in the beginning, good dialogue, pacing's a little bit slow, but I still think for a patch like this, it's fine, and just like point 2 and point 3 did for me, it reinvigorated my confidence in this writing team. In particular, the meanwhile scene. Or should I say for this patch in particular, the earlier scene. This might be one of the best meanwhile cutscenes I've seen them put out in quite a long time, and that is saying something. But we are gonna have to talk about spoilers, so let's get into it.
Halmarut!
Hold fast you must, as we press ever onward, for soon it begins, and every world shall tremble. The Winterers must be prepared to outlast the great withering to come.
That's your ominous prediction, is it?
No, it's nature's proclamation. Can't you hear it? It echoes in the silence, left by the will of the star.
When I was approaching the end of this MSQ, my thoughts were, okay, this is a pretty decent setup, but it is still rather slow, and having to wait another 4 months for actual payoff is gonna hurt a little bit. I thought it was a solid okay patch. I still think I prefer 7.2 and 7.3, but I still think this patch is overall still above 0.0 and 0.1 for me. Then we had the meanwhile scene, and like I said earlier, it's not a meanwhile scene, it's a scene that shows another perspective that happened during the MSQ earlier, right near the end. The ass scene from the end of 7.3 is revealed. It's not Pasturo. The ass scene associated with Calyx and Winterer is Halmarut, another member of the Convocation of 14. And I'm looking at the fandom page right here, and we can see Halmarut the Sower, cultivator of botanical and mycological creations, basically mushrooms and like fungus. And apparently, we've actually run into her research before back in Academia Annida. And again, according to this page, she was one of the Convocation of 14 that helped summon Zodiac, but was also split into 14 shards. She basically spies on us during the course of our story in patch 7.4. But we as the Warrior of Light notice her out of the corner of our eye right at the end, and we get a glimpse of her. Now, when it happened in the moment, I thought, oh, okay, we'll find out later on who this character is. I thought she might have been like a reference to like Lulu from Final Fantasy X, because she was holding like this stuffed teddy bear. It was a squirrel, actually. But then we get to the final cutscene of the patch, and we just get an entire conversation that happened between Halmarut and Calyx, who is basically the stuffed squirrel at this point, talking about everything that's going on. We get so many lore bombs here, it's crazy. And it's leading me to believe that this story, and I don't know if it's going to happen in 0.5, or if it's going to happen in 8.0 or 8.x. It feels as if this story is about to get really dark. There's a few reasons I have come to this conclusion. One, Final Fantasy XIV's love to juxtapose something very silly and cute alongside something horrific. Think of the Loporrits with the final days of Endwalker. And here, you take this villain, and I don't think he's like Final Fantasy XIV's best villain ever, but he's a really solid villain with Calyx. And now you put him into this very cute, like, stuffed squirrel looking thing. I cannot take him seriously, and I think that's the point. And I think Halmarut basically being this Ascian that's a bit quirky, high energy, honestly a little bit awkward, alongside like Calyx in this stuffed squirrel little toy thing. I think it's supposed to serve a similar role aesthetically to like what the Loporrits did for the final days, where it's like, this is the lighthearted element, but we're gonna juxtapose it with something terrible and dark going on at the same time. And they did kind of name drop it. Halmarut believes something known as the Great Withering is going to occur, and it's going to happen as a direct result of, to quote, "It echoes in the silence left by the will of the star." So I think what they're doing for this next big narrative arc is that maybe the Source, but I think definitely the Shards are going to start to die. And that because Hydaelyn is no longer there, or Hydaelyn and Zodiac, depending upon how they want to play this. Because Hydaelyn, though, and I'll just use Hydaelyn for shorthand here, because Hydaelyn is no longer really there, that causes some kind of chain of events to occur that leads to the death of the Shards. Because Halmarut and Calyx acted in such a way to where they feel as if they're very confident that the Ninth is about to go the way of the Dodo. The Ninth is about to it's about to die. They feel very confident in this. And they specifically feel confident in this if we do not currently change the course of what we are doing. If we keep doing the same thing that we are doing, they believe the Ninth is about to die. And now also, to me, the name of this antagonistic force we're going to be going up against, Winterer, makes a lot more sense now. Because Halmarut basically explains what the name is. The Winterers must be prepared to outlast the Great Withering to come. So it feels and seems as if the Winterers' goal is to basically take a knee and run out the clock, wait for this coming disaster, this Great Withering to occur, and then put themselves in such a position to where they can survive it and come out the other end alive. And I guess using the Endless was one of their mechanisms or one of their ideas to get around that. And that somehow being endless would allow them to survive the Great Withering. But now that we have stopped that, the people of the Ninth are just going to die. I find it really interesting because like the tone of voice Halmarut has in the final bits of this cutscene are so drastically different to the beginning. At the end, she's almost like this prophet. For soon it begins and every world shall tremble. The Winterers must be prepared to outlast the Great Withering to come. So whatever it is that's going to happen, it's going to affect all the worlds. Now, whether she means the entire universe or just the Source and the Shards, we're not sure yet. I imagine that since this story is almost certainly going to be about the various Shards, and we're probably going to go to the various Shards some way, somehow, this will be a big driving force to go to these various Shards. And that when we go to them, they're going to be in this state of decline. We don't know what the Great Withering is, we don't know how it's going to work or how it's going to function. But personally speaking, I think this is an excellent way to frame this new next narrative arc. It's a direct consequence, seemingly, from our events of the Hydaelyn and Zodiac arc, and also gives us a really good excuse to go to these other Shards, and also gives them as writers a really cool lever to pull to cause some kind of catastrophe to occur. I really do hope that this story gets dark, because I think this is an excellent way to transition us from Dawntrail into whatever it is to come. I am hooked. I'm so fascinated by where they're going with this. And I know in this spoiler section, I haven't talked a lot about the rest of the patch or anything like that. But it's like, yeah, we go to Treno. I like the way they develop that corner of the world and build up that little area. I think the story we get with Kryl and Kryl meeting her like distant aunt, not necessarily distant, but like distant in terms of she was in a whole different world. I like that part. It's really slow, but it's still fine. It's the finale of this patch though. That's what really hooked me. I need patch 7.5, and even more than that. The thing I want to see the most, 8.0's cutscene. I want that cinematic. I just want to know where we're going to. I need to see the next big direction that this story goes in. I think this is really dang cool. I'm a big fan of what they're doing right now. I think the big twist in actually using Halmarut here into like Pastero is really interesting. That was a nice bait and switch to me. Obviously, it'll all depend on execution, but with the execution we got in point 2, point 3, and also point 4, I'm confident, I'm optimistic, and I'm really looking forward to what is to come. There's so much interesting theory crafting to do for this story, because they've hinted at Halmarut before, like even back in Shadowbringers. Like, I'm looking at my Discord, and someone found Halmarut's, like, memory crystal from all the way back in Shadowbringers. And like I talked about with the fandom page earlier, it's like, we've run into the works of Halmarut before, but just thinking about what is to come with this story, with Winter as a faction, how this Great Withering is going to be executed, how it's going to work, how was possibly the death of Hydaelyn the stimulus needed to cause the Great Withering. There's so many interesting things going on right now. I'm all on board.
It's nature's proclamation.
So yeah, while the story of patch 7.4 was kind of slow, I think looking back on it, we're going to really like the foreshadowing and the setup that patch 7.4 brought to the table. My mind is going in a million different directions trying to piece everything together. But here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your own theory for the future of the story of Final Fantasy XIV. What little details have you picked up on? Where do you think this story is going to go? Leave your own theories down below, and I'll react to them in a future video, and also give my own 2 cents on them. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And speaking of really cool stuff, Doom Train. That trial, magnificent, a visual spectacle of awesomeness. Want to see my reaction to it? Check out this video right here for more. Stay safe, everybody, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody, until we meet again!